Hello Galactic family. Humanity of surface, brothers and sisters, I come to perhaps bring to you perhaps answers of the forms of relative informations to your requests. Question: do you have information on new forms of life? The forms of life of the fifth dimension as various and are varied as the forms of life of the third dimension as well inside the solar system as in other galaxies. The model of which I will maintain you relates to one of the models that the human ones can choose after their rise. This model corresponds to the replacement of a body of the third dimension by a body of the fifth dimension from which the structures cellular, vibratory, atomic, organic, metabolic are deeply different, but other forms of life in the fifth dimension are possible. There is not only one form of rise and that a destination but of multiples. Nevertheless, one can propose a guiding line in the obvious differences between a life in the third dimension and a conscious life in the fifth dimension, whatever the element of origin and whatever the existing genetic filiation. The first element expressed in the life in the fifth dimension, which is basically different from the life in the third dimension, is it not existence of the shade and all the phenomena inherent in the shade. It is as well about the shadows, since lighting will not come more than one point but of totality from the points of the skies. Alternation day-night cannot thus exist. There cannot either be alternation takes care sleep. The communication calls upon radiation, with the vibration. Only possible technology, if as long as this word is applicable, is the technology of the light. Indeed, the light in the fifth dimension follows the thought. I would even say that the light is the concretization of the thought. Certain characteristics of the third dimension will not exist anymore. The differences are important according to the mediums of life and the ethers attended by the human ones in upward phase, and it cannot thus be drawn up of unit table of the organic demonstrations. In a more total way, the needs inherent in the existence in third exist almost more in the upward bodies, only their acts of the nutritive needs, the emotional needs, the sexual needs, which are more or less extinct in the various worlds of the fifth dimension. The social rules of group are not any more function of lines to the genetic direction but of filiation to the spiritual direction. The bond between the individuals is a bond of group within the meaning of what you called hard group animal, with nevertheless an acute sense of the individuality put at the profit of the community. In this direction the exchange values known in the world of the third dimension, based on the concepts of competition, on the order of precedence, on filiation, do not have absolutely any more course. The technological means of exchanges that you called money with the direction purchase, property, sale, cannot quite simply exist in the fifth dimension, whatever the mode of demonstration, since creation is instantaneous and does not depend on an unspecified capacity but well on a common reality. The interruption of conscience related so that you call, in the third dimension, death, cannot exist any more. When a vehicle of the fifth dimension is worn, we're not occurring on the same scale of time. Whatever the worlds of the fifth dimension, the conscience is transferred simply in the new vehicle. From the life in the fifth dimension, the access and perception more or less conscious of other dimensions are practiced, is known. The fifth dimension can be defined as an intermediate position of life between the third dimension and the ninth dimension. Thus the fifth dimension is a world of passage and transition towards the dense worlds from the third dimension and towards the faster worlds of luminescence from the ninth dimension, where communicate between them various companies of a live group in various dimensions of ethers of the fifth dimension. This information should not divert you. They are there simply to hold you informed. According to some walk in having existed between the intraground and the world of surface, what seems to you most different is the absence of shade, the absence of disease and the immanence of the light and of the same its impermanency and its permanence. The light is the base of the fifth dimension, thing which you do not know. Except at the time of certain experiments called dead or experiment of imminent death. Here is the screen of total life in the worlds of the fifth dimension, but there exist basic differences, as in the third dimension, between primitive tribes and technicized hypergroups. If there are some interrogations which remain in which I can return, I want to try well to help you. Question: does why have communications between various forms of life in the fifth dimension? Yes. As well as you have various means of communication. Simply they are not technical but telepathic, direct and instantaneous from one end to another of the worlds of transitions from the fifth dimension. Question: does there exist a form of hierarchy? There is no more order of precedence. The hierarchy is not heard with the direction where you hear it, but simply we have delegates. It is those which are sent to represent us, but they make more than to represent us because of telepathic access of communication. They lend their vehicle to our thoughts. There are nevertheless structures of control, not of our freedom, not of our dimension, but of other dimensions of which we have the load. It is the only moment when any hierarchical line is present. There is no hierarchical difference between a governor, an administrator of the geodetic structures and simple meditating or a simple craftsman of light. They all are simple. Each one is occupied with its pole of interest in a total way. Question: what do you call craftsmen of light? They are our artists who are able to build with the light in a way easier and merrier than some other inhabitants. Question: what do you call meditating? Meditating could correspond so that you call your priests. Simply our priests with us are obviously connected to higher dimensions in manner, I would say, more direct than the whole of our community. They deal with that of which we do not want to occupy us and to accurately transmit the remarks and the thoughts. Question: does that mean that the beings do not think by themselves? They think by themselves, but the thought is a thought of light. It cannot exist thoughts of division, thoughts not turned towards the collective. The thought is diffused with the whole of the community. The sum of the individual thoughts is not an addition but well a different harmonic whose synthesis is collected by other communities. Question: the disharmony, can it exist? From the moment when the emotions within the meaning of your brain of human being of the third dimension of this dimension do not exist, as from the moment when there is only one common song of the light, there cannot be disharmony. Question: what becomes the body when it is worn? It is returned to the light. There is no barrier with the direction where you hear it, since there is no death. Question: why it of the children and the couples? We do not call that of the couples but pairs. They do not have the same relations as the others. Obviously, there is no possession. The children are not the possession of a pair. The birth exists, but the birth is created only when one body is worn. There is no increase, it is no reduction. The concepts of multiplication exist only in the third dimension, which returns account that the higher dimensions are, the more you meet the same people. Question: according to which criteria are installed the pairs? According to multiple criteria which always go in the direction of the community. It is a total freedom. It is not as on your premise. Many beings decide to remain alone or to function to 3 or 4. And when I say to function, it is not a question of life as structured as yours, but well of moment when the beings need to divide, I would say, a certain form of intimacy, not of insulation compared to the community, but a particular form of mode of relation. Question: how the new bodies are generated? There is procreation by sexual way as well as one can speak about sexuality which does not have anything anymore to see with what you practice. Procreation calls upon those which wish, at the convenient period, to give rise to a new body with the conscience which must leave. Even if there is continuity of the conscience, there needs reformator. Some share the new conscience, a little as if you educate children, except that, there, the children are as old as those which raise them. There is to raise a body, which requires a maturation. The conscience is conscious completely of the body which was left and conscious of its new body instantaneously, but nevertheless one period ego of training or relearning related to the new structure of body which on a scale of time which does not have anything anymore to see with your scale of time must grow and to stabilize itself. Question: why is it a form of food? The food is a right which is a different right according to the lifestyles different from the fifth dimension. For us, we decided to maintain a form nutrition who are connected more with one ritual, non-essential but extremely cordial, through a plant, if as well as one can use this word, of which we absorb some nutrients of time to other. We generally nourish ourselves light and thoughts which are light. The food and the maintenance of the body vehicle are done through the light. Question: what is it of your dwellings? They are structures in honeycombs at 6 sides which are more of the small islands. Include: understand well that we do not have to protect us from nothing. The light is everywhere. These pseudo-walls consist of light. They allow pairs or triple to isolate a certain time. Question: do you know the concept of destruction? I do not include understand this concept. What do you call destruction? From the moment when nothing is created, nothing is lost, all changes. What was wall of light becomes light. The wall, with a direction where here it to you, can become nutrient. Question: will the artists of the third dimension remain artists in the fifth dimension? In the fifth dimension, in all the worlds, we all are creators. Question: but do they particularly choose this role of artist? It is their desire during a certain time. Question: can they change function? Obviously, but you seek a little too much to establish corollaries with what you live. Question: are your individualities polarized? Yes. Having the two polarities, an individual can decide to try out the polarity which is appropriate to him either by taking another body or by changing body. Plasticity is the rule. Question: does the thought make it possible to move? Obviously. There are not other technologies. The technology of light is the rule in the fifth dimension. Question: when the earth will have passed in the fifth dimension, which will be its destiny? Which funny of question. To lose an atmosphere, to become with the eyes which will be in the third dimension a desert world, cold, not populated life, since the life is placed inside. That is difficult to include. Understand. The ground exists in multiple dimensions and multiple specimens. But that is eminently complex because you try to include understand that with your eyes of flesh. Question: what does one call new ground? I would like the knowledge. Question: in the fifth dimension will we see stars? In the worlds in which I live we see the light. What makes visible stars? The night. Question: there are sounds in your world? The thought is sound. The light is sound. I turn over in my spaces of life. Greetings with you and certainly with soon.